My millionaire girlfriend falsely accused me of cheating with fabricated evidence. My family abandoned me without listening, prioritizing their business. But 4 years later, when my innocence was proven, now they only want me for their wedding, and my answer left them speechless. I'm 29 years old. I live in Austin, Texas. And if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would ever talk to my family again, I would have told you yes. Eventually, when things calmed down. But now, after everything that happened, after they basically erased me from their lives over a lie they didn't even bother to verify, the answer is no. And honestly, I feel completely at peace with that decision, which is something I never thought I'd say. I guess I should start at the beginning, when everything was still normal, or what I thought was normal at the time. I grew up in San Francisco, in one of those families that people consider privileged, you know, the type of family that appears in business magazines and charity events. My parents, Peter and Caroline, own a pretty successful chain of eco-friendly resorts. I mean, we're not billionaires like Jeff Bezos, but let's just say I never had to worry about money. I have two siblings, Taylor, my older sister who's now like 33, and Jackson, my younger brother who just turned 26. We were always a close family, or at least that's what I thought. We went to dinners together, celebrated every birthday, took those family trips to Aspen in the winter, all very typical of upper-class San Francisco families. When I was 24, I met Adriana at a charity event organized by my parents' friends. It was one of those boring nights where everyone wears expensive dresses and pretends to care about the cause of the month, but really they're just there for networking and to appear in society page photos. Adriana was exactly the type of girl my parents would approve of. Daughter of boutique hotel chain owners. She had studied at Stanford, spoke 3 languages, basically had the perfect resume to be Peter and Caroline's daughter-in-law. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, things were good between us. We went out to expensive restaurants, went to Napa on weekends, did everything young, wealthy San Francisco couples are supposed to do. But after like a year and a half together, I started to notice that the relationship felt more like a performance than something real. Everything had to be perfect for Instagram. You know, every date had to be at the right place, with the right clothes, with the right people seeing us. Adriana would obsess over weird things, like if I posted a photo with my friends without including her, or if I didn't respond to her texts in less than 10 minutes. I thought, well, maybe she's just insecure. Maybe she just needs more attention. And like an idiot, I tried to be more attentive, more present, more everything she wanted. The thing is, it was never enough. She started accusing me of weird things, like if my assistant at work was female, then obviously something was going on there, or if I went out with my friends without her, it was because I was trying to hide something. I'd tell her, Adriana, I literally tell you everything I do. I have nothing to hide. But she always found some reason to be upset. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All those signs that something wasn't right, but I guess when you're in the middle of the situation, you don't see it that clearly. Everything exploded one night in March, like 4 years ago. I was in my apartment, working on some reports because I had a presentation the next day, when suddenly my sister Taylor showed up unannounced. And when I say she showed up, like she literally knocked on the door, like she was breaking it down. And when I opened it, she was standing there with her laptop in hand and a face I'd never seen before, like a mix of disgust and disappointment. She said, I need you to explain this to me right now, and showed me the screen. It was a text conversation, supposedly mine, with some girl named Melissa, saying things like, see you tonight, can't wait to see you again. Adriana doesn't have to know anything. And I just stood there looking at the screen thinking, what the hell is this? Because I literally had never seen those messages in my life, didn't even know any Melissa. I told Taylor, these texts are fake. I never sent any of this. And she just looked at me like, yeah, right, and told me that Adriana had found the messages on my phone when I was in the shower. I tried to explain that it was impossible, that someone had fabricated those messages, but Taylor didn't want to hear it. She told me that Adriana was devastated, that my parents already knew, that basically the whole family was aware that I was a liar and a cheater. And the worst part is, they didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. Like, that same night my parents called me and my father said, Vincent, this is unacceptable. Adriana's family is important to our business. and you've put everything at risk with your behavior. Can you believe it? They didn't even ask me if it was true, didn't even consider the possibility that I was telling the truth. They just assumed I was guilty because Adriana had shown those fake messages and because, basically, maintaining a good relationship with her family was more important than believing their own son. My mother said something like, "I can't even look at you right now. I'm so disappointed," and hung up before I could say anything else. The next few days were a total nightmare. Adriana posted something on her social media like a cryptic message about betrayal and broken trust, and suddenly all our mutual acquaintances were commenting with broken heart emojis and support messages for her. Nobody contacted me to ask what had happened. Nobody. It was like they had already decided I was the villain of the story without even hearing my side. I tried to talk to Adriana directly, went to her apartment and said, "You know those messages are fake. Why are you doing this?" And she just looked at me with that victim face she had perfected and said, "I can't believe you're still lying. I have the proof, Vincent." And that's when I realized there was no way to win this situation. She had fabricated all the evidence, probably using Photoshop or some app, or maybe she even bought a burner phone to send the messages and make it seem more real. I don't know. But what I do know is she planned everything perfectly. 2 weeks after all that drama, my parents called me to their house, and I thought, okay, finally we're going to talk about this like adults. Finally they're going to hear my side of the story. But when I arrived, my father didn't even let me pass the entrance. He said, "We've decided it's best if you stay away from the family for now. The situation with Adriana and her family is very delicate, and your presence only complicates things." And I stood there thinking, are you seriously telling me to stay away from my own family over a lie you didn't even try to investigate? My mother was behind him, and I asked her directly, "Mom, do you really believe I would do something like that after knowing me my whole life?" And she just said, "Actions have consequences. Vincent, you need to take responsibility for what you did." And that's when something broke inside me, because I realized that to them, I was completely disposable. Their business relationship with Adriana's family, their social image, their network of contacts, all of that was more important than me, more important than the truth. Jackson, my younger brother, didn't even return my calls. When I finally caught him on the phone like a week later, he said something like, "Dude, I don't know what to tell you. The evidence is there," and hung up. Taylor was the only one who at least talked to me, but even she would say things like, "If you're really innocent, why would Adriana have a reason to make all this up?" You know what I mean? As if she needed to have a logical reason to lie, as if lying people always act with perfect logic. I was basically completely alone. I lost my family, lost all my mutual friends with Adriana because they all believed her, and honestly, I felt like I was living in a psychological horror movie where nobody believes the protagonist. But there were days where I'd wake up and think, did this really happen? Did my family really abandon me without even giving me the benefit of the doubt? I made probably the best decision of my life at that moment, though it didn't feel that way when I made it. I decided to completely remove myself from that situation, from that city, from that whole toxic world. I had some money saved. Not much because most of my expenses were covered by the trust fund. My parents obviously cut off immediately, but I had enough to survive a few months. I packed everything that fit in my car, a BMW that was technically mine because I had bought it with my own money from my job, and I left for Austin, Texas. Why Austin? Honestly, I didn't have a deep reason. I had visited the city a couple of times for work conferences and had liked the vibe, like more relaxed than San Francisco, less pretentious, more real somehow. And also, honestly, I wanted to be far enough from my family to not be tempted to run back when things got difficult. The first few months in Austin were brutal. I'm not gonna lie. I got a job in software sales, like an entry-level position that paid like a quarter of what I made before, and I had to move into an apartment that was basically the size of my old place's closet. But you know what? There was something liberating about all of it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living under my parents' expectations, wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't acting out a version of myself I thought others wanted to see. I worked like crazy those first 2 years. I'd wake up at 6 in the morning, go to the gym because I needed something to channel all the anger and pain I was feeling, then work until 8 or 9 at night, And on weekends, I'd study and get certified in different tech areas, because I knew that if I wanted to get ahead, I had to constantly prove my worth. And it worked. After like a year and a half, they offered me an account manager position, and after another year, I got promoted to senior account manager. But the most important thing that happened during that time was that I started meeting real people. People who didn't care what family you came from or how much money your parents had. I made friends at work, started hanging out with people who had never heard of eco-friendly resorts or charity events in San Francisco, and honestly, it was the fresh air I needed. For the first time in years, I felt like myself, not like the edited and perfected version of Vincent I had been in California. Like 2.5 years ago, I met Ellie at a co-working space. She's a graphic designer, works freelance, and basically is the opposite of Adriana in every possible way. She's genuine, doesn't care about having the perfect Instagram, doesn't need constant validation from strangers on the internet, and best of all, when I told her my whole story, like everything that had happened with my family and Adriana, she just said, "That sounds horrible, but it also sounds like you dodged a bullet with toxic people." And she was right. With Ellie, things just flowed naturally. We didn't have to pretend to be someone we weren't, didn't have to maintain any public image, we could just be ourselves. We moved in together after like 6 months of dating, which I know sounds fast, but it just felt right, you know? And like 3 months ago, I proposed to her. Not with a $50,000 ring or on an elaborate trip to Europe, but in our apartment on a Tuesday night, after cooking pasta together. And she said yes. During all that time, almost 3 full years, I had no contact with my family. 0. I blocked my parents on everything. Ignored Jackson's occasional attempts to send me generic messages like, "Hey bro, how are you?" And the only person I maintained minimal contact with was Taylor, and only because she had at least tried to maintain some kind of connection, even though she still didn't fully believe me. And then, like 2 months ago, I got a call from Taylor. I hadn't talked to her in maybe 6 months, and when I saw her name on my phone screen, I honestly considered not answering. But something made me answer. Maybe curiosity, maybe residual hope that things could somehow get better, I don't know. I answered, and she immediately said, "Vincent, I need to tell you something important. Can you talk now?" She told me that a friend of Adriana's, Courtney, had finally confessed the truth. Like, after almost 4 years of carrying that secret, Courtney had had a crisis of conscience or whatever and had told Taylor that Adriana had completely fabricated all those text messages. She had used Photoshop to create the conversations, had bought a burner phone to send real messages to herself and make it seem more credible, had planned the whole scheme for weeks before executing it. And you know what the reason was? Because she felt I wasn't committed enough to the relationship, that I wasn't paying her enough attention. And she thought that if she created drama like that, I would try harder to prove I loved her. When Taylor told me all this, I expected to feel something like immediate vindication or relief that finally the truth had come out. But really, I just felt a weird emptiness. Like, okay, now everyone knows I was always telling the truth, so what? Does that erase the last 4 years? Does that change the fact that my family abandoned me without even questioning it? I asked Taylor if our parents knew yet, and she said yes, that she had told them everything. And then I waited for her to tell me that my parents were desperate to apologize, that they felt horrible, that they wanted to fix things. But you know what she told me? She said, "They know, but they haven't said much about it." And that's when everything became perfectly clear to me. Like 2 weeks passed after that conversation with Taylor, and I didn't get a call, a text, an email from my parents. Nothing. Not an apology. Not an acknowledgement that they had made a massive mistake, not even a damn attempt to justify what they did. And I was thinking, really? After discovering their son was falsely accused and they abandoned him over a lie, their response is just silence? Finally, my mother sent me a text message, one of those short, cold messages that basically said, "We've learned the truth about what happened with Adriana. We hope you're doing well." Not even a sorry. Not even a, "We were wrong." Just like, "Oops, turns out you weren't a liar after all. Well, see you." Honestly, I would have preferred she not contact me at all. And then, like 3 weeks ago, the invitation arrived. Jackson's getting married in December, and Taylor sent me the invitation apparently because my parents didn't have the guts to do it themselves. It was one of those elegant, expensive invitations with all the details of a wedding that's probably going to cost more than most people make in a year. And there was a note from Taylor that said something like, "I know things have been difficult, but it would be important for Jackson if you were there. It's family after all." I honestly laughed when I read that. Family? Now they remember I'm family? When they need me for family photos and to keep up appearances, then I'm family? But when I was trying to defend myself from a false accusation that destroyed my life, then it didn't matter if we were family or not? Taylor called me later to push the issue more, and she said things like, "Vincent, I know Mom and Dad made mistakes, but don't you think it's time to get over all this? Jackson really wants you at his wedding, and it would be very awkward for everyone if you don't come." And that last part killed me. Like, it would be awkward for everyone. No, it would be awkward for them. For my parents, who would have to explain to their rich friends and business partners why their oldest son isn't present at their youngest son's wedding. I told Taylor I wasn't going to go, that I had built a completely new life in Austin and had no interest in being part of that shitty world again, where image is more important than truth. She tried to make me feel guilty, told me I was being immature, that I was punishing Jackson for something that wasn't his fault. But the thing is, Jackson also abandoned me, also believed me guilty without evidence, also chose his comfort over his brother. Then the messages from my mother started. Texts like, "We understand you're upset, but this is important for the family. You can't let your pride ruin such a special moment for your brother." And I was thinking, my pride? That's what she thinks this is? It's not pride. It's self-respect. It's understanding that people who really love you don't abandon you when things get tough, don't choose business connections over you, don't treat you like you're an optional accessory they can discard and pick up when it's convenient for them. My father also tried to contact me, sent me a long email like a formal letter where he basically said he understood there had been misunderstandings in the past, but that it was important to keep the family united, especially at important moments like Jackson's wedding. Not one real apology in the whole email, just that cold corporate language he uses for everything, like he was negotiating a business contract instead of talking to his son whose life he destroyed. The pressure continued for weeks. Jackson finally called me, and that conversation was probably the most frustrating of all. He told me he understood I was upset, but that my absence at his wedding was going to cause a lot of problems and awkward questions. I said, "Jackson, do you realize that 4 years ago I was falsely accused of something I never did? You all believed me, guilty immediately, abandoned me completely, and now that it's been proven I was always right, nobody has had the decency to apologize properly?" And he just said, "I know things were complicated, but that was a long time ago. We need to leave it in the past." Leave it in the past? Like it was something insignificant that just happened and that's it. Like they hadn't destroyed my life, my reputation, my relationships, everything. Like I should just forget that when I needed them most. When I was desperate for someone to believe me, they chose to protect their business interests and their social image over their own son and brother. I told Jackson I wasn't going to go to his wedding, that I wished him the best, but had no place in my life for people who had treated me that way. He got angry, told me I was being selfish and dramatic, and hung up. And you know what? That only confirmed I made the right decision. If after everything that happened, his reaction is to call me selfish for establishing healthy boundaries, then clearly he hasn't learned anything and isn't worth having in my life. Taylor made one last attempt to convince me, sent me a long message explaining that Mom and Dad actually do feel bad about what happened, but don't know how to apologize after so much time. That they're proud of how I've rebuilt my life but don't know how to express it. Basically a bunch of excuses and justifications. I responded, telling her I appreciated that she at least tried to maintain some kind of relationship with me, but that if my parents really felt bad, if they really wanted to fix things, they would find a way to tell me directly instead of using others as intermediaries. A week ago, I made the final decision to block everyone except Taylor, and only because she had at least made a genuine effort to understand my perspective, even if she didn't agree with me. I blocked my parents, Jackson, even some cousins and uncles who had started contacting me, pressuring me to go to the wedding. And honestly, after doing it, I felt incredibly free. Last night I was in the kitchen with Ellie. We were making dinner together like we do almost every night. And she asked me if I felt bad about not going to Jackson's wedding. I told her no. That at first maybe there was a small part of me that felt guilty, but that now I just felt peace. Because the truth is, I don't owe anything to people who prove they only want me in their lives when it's convenient for them, when they need to complete the perfect image of the happy family for their Instagram photos and their social events. My life now is completely different from what it was 4 years ago. I have a successful consulting business I built from scratch. I have a real and healthy relationship with someone who loves me for who I am and not for my last name or my family's connections. I have friends who would be there for me no matter what, and I have peace of mind knowing I'm not living a lie. I don't need the validation or approval of my blood family because I've built my own family here in Austin. Sometimes, I think about what my life would have been like if none of this had happened. If Adriana had never fabricated those messages, if my family had believed and supported me. But honestly, I think everything happened for a reason. That horrible experience showed me exactly who those people really were, freed me from living under their expectations and their superficial world, and forced me to discover who I really was when I didn't have the backing of their money and their connections. Jackson's wedding is in 3 weeks. I'm going to be here in Austin, probably watching some movie with Ellie and our rescue cat we adopted a few months ago. I'm not going to be thinking about what I'm missing. I'm not going to be looking at photos on social media. I'm just going to be living my life. The life I built myself, the life that's really mine. And that, honestly, is more valuable than any fake reconciliation with people who never knew how to value me.